Okay. Give me your name once again, please.
My name is Sauda. Um, as I was stating before, born and raised in California, grew up in a Muslim household, um, was essentially almost forced, but leniently, to practice Islam. And I don't feel like I was really connected to it the way that I could say should have been, but I was going through my own.
The way that you might have been.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. hmm And I was constantly questioning everything and, questioning things, especially like questioning teachers, right? Can
Yes.
sometimes make them question you, like, oh, she must not practice the faith, or she must not. I'm not sure. I may be projecting, really. But
Oh, yeah. She may not believe.
yes, exactly.
I
Uh-huh.
get it. Yeah.
But I always truly did believe. I just had questions, right? As would
Sure.
anyone. I'm not gonna believe anything that anyone's telling me just because they're older than me or they have this knowledge. It's like, okay, well, I would like to see what's really out there. And
Understood.
over the years, having time and spending time with myself, I feel like was like the main factor. Um, I started reading up on spirituality, New Age spiritualism, and it constantly brought me back to the Quran. And I'm like, this is everything that the Quran speaks on, just with different terms. Instead of God,
Yes.
you're saying the universe. And it's like, okay, well, I can go back to the Quran for this. So I'm going to go back to that.
Right. Okay.
uh, and yeah, I didn't really have my awakening up until I was about 22. And like I looked at life completely different. And I feel like that moment was when I truly submitted to God. Like saying that you submit to God versus really believing it in your heart is
Or, yeah.
very, very different, at least for me in my
Yes.
experience. And that's when everything changed for me. I started looking at things in a different light,
Mhm.
um, as well as being exposed to truth and what's really going on in this world and ways to navigate it. Um, but yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Well, there's a lot in that little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm watching you, I'm reading you, and I'm feeling you.
Thank you.
And much was said in what you just said about yourself and about how many people who are traveling your road are feeling about religion versus spirituality, trying to find themselves, trying to find the right path, which religion claims to offer us all, but doesn't always come through. Sometimes the path that religion leads us to is a path that has been carved out for us by the purveyors of that religion. And it's not necessarily a road that leads us to anything universal, no matter what they say as a label. This is the religion of universality. This is the God of oneness. There's a lot of labels that people have put on things that at the end of that road does not necessarily pan out to be as advertised. So it's not always the person, in this case, yourself, who's to blame. It's not always the person who is really the confused one. The confused people oftentimes are those who are purveying a particular idea or trying to sell you a particular product, but the product doesn't pan out to be what the label describes it as. So I've experienced that. Many of my counterparts have experienced that. And it's not the case of turning away from religion, but it is the case of doing exactly what you said you did, and that is question things. And I don't know of any other scripture. I've read many of them, maybe most of them, So it's not a case of just turning away from religion altogether. It's a case of asking enough questions to fulfill a deeply embedded desire that Allah actually put in us
Mhm.
to question. In fact, one of the questions of the Quran itself is, have you not deeply pondered the Quran?
Mhm.
Had it been from other than Allah, you would have found within it many what's the word I'm looking for? Discrepancies. Yeah,
Mhm.
you have found many discrepancies. It says this, but it does that. It does this, but it says the other thing. We would have found a whole lot of those if it had been from other than Allah. Now, we can talk about what other than Allah means because it doesn't mean what most people think it means. It doesn't mean what most Muslims believe it means. Most Muslims believe that there is this Allah, he's out there. You got to call on him and hope that he picks up the phone, because he's so busy. He's so busy. So you got to be, you just got to sit and wait. If you ask Allah for something, you just got to sit and, cross your fingers and hope that, that thing you asked for actually comes into fruition. But that is not at all how Allah operates. And again, according to the Quran, not according to Benjamin Bilal, according to the Quran, Allah says that he is nearer to you than your jugular vein.
Dang.
You know,
Yeah.
you know the line, right? It
Yeah.
also says that he answers the call of every caller when he calls.
Mhm.
So that's like me telling you, Sauda, that whenever you call my phone, I'm right there to answer it. Never a time when I'm away from my phone if you call. That's what Allah is saying to us. As long as we're ready, prepared to call and have a conversation, He's always ready and prepared to answer.
Yeah.
Now imagine if that were your boss on your job, the CEO even. And let's say you're just the cleanup woman. You're the person that takes out the garbage and stuff like. And you say, I have a question for the CEO. Do you think I could get an appointment with him? Everybody in that office would tell you, are you out of your mind?
Mhm.
You don't speak to the CEO. He doesn't have time for you. He's busy building a company. And then you happen to pass him in the hallway and you say, excuse me, Mr. CEO, is it possible for me to have about 5 minutes with you? And he says, of course. How come you didn't ask me sooner? Hold on. I have a couple of meetings I have to attend and I have a couple of calls I have to return, but let me just put that on hold to hear what it is you have to say. Now, in the world, that's probably an impossible scenario, but with Allah, that's his modus operandi.
Mhm.
That's just how he rolls. All you have to do is call. And he's going to come, he's going to pay attention, he's going to listen, and he's going to fulfill what it is you're asking him to do as long as it's of a righteous nature. So that's where I wanted to start you so you know from the beginning that this is going to be a different kind of interview or a call or whatever it is you want to call what we're doing here. Okay. It's going to be different, and I want you to be completely comfortable
Mhm.
and not feel as though this is going to be any kind of interrogation, any kind of judgment. There's no judgment to this. You could tell me anything about yourself, within limits, of course, but you can tell me anything. It's not going to make me prejudiced against you. I don't care if you said, I'm not Muslim anymore. I don't want to be Muslim anymore. I want to be a Buddhist. That's none of my business. If you said, I want to be an atheist, I don't believe this stuff anymore. I read enough of it, Mr. Bilal. I have other things I want to talk to you about. I say, go right ahead. Because the Quran says in the Arabic language, it says, La ikraha fid din. Have you heard that term before? That line before? It means no compulsion in religion.
Mhm.
There's to be no compelling, no forcing
Mhm.
in what's called the deen. Deen, they translate as religion. So this means that most of our Muslim history almost all of it, has been situated upon a foundation of wrong conclusions, especially the history that involves conquests of other people in the name of Islam,
Mhm.
beginning with the ancient Persians who practiced Zoroastrianism. We did not have a right, according to Allah in the Quran, we did not have a right to go over to where they are, especially. This wasn't in Arabia. This was in what's now called Iran. It was called that then, but they gave it a different name when they gave it Persia. But we didn't have a right to go over there and tell them accept Islam or suffer the consequences. Islam or die. Islam or the sword. We didn't have a right to do that. The Christians, Jews, Buddhists, anybody. We're to leave them alone to practice as they practice. And what was supposed to be the selling point of our deen was our behavior,
Mhm.
how we treated people. This is what won over the people in Indonesia.
Mhm.
Probably one of a handful of countries that converted to Islam based on that premise that we're going to win them over with goodness. We're going to win them over by showing that we are decent people when it comes to economics, how we treat people economically. We're not going to cheat them out of their goods. We're not going to put a hand on the scale, when they're not looking to say that this weighed more so we can charge them higher prices. We're not going to do that. The people of Indonesia, it won over practically the whole country because of the behavior, the treatment of not Muslims, not when the Muslims come and we act like that, because we don't want to cheat Muslims. I've seen Muslims do that. No, hey, take $10 off. I said, did you take $10 off of the other? Oh, that's a Christian, brother. We Muslims. You're wrong. You're supposed to treat everybody like that.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me get to some of the questions you may have had or do have.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that I have a lot of friends who are of other faiths, of course, and we speak on religion. And it's great, because everyone has an open mind about it. Um, but that was one of the biggest things I think for me as well, because I've gone to Muslim countries, even Indonesia, because I'm half Indonesian, half Nigerian, but I look black,
Yes.
and it is crazy to me sometimes how they do treat you differently. And I I I reference like the Quran, when it comes to things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it does speak on treating everyone kindly, like leading with your heart, not your mind. And
Beautiful.
the how they view black people specifically. In Islam, if you're Arab, you're seen as more superior, right? Because the
Yes.
Quran, we have Makkah there, Medina, and and then kind of just like reference and like think about it. The Quran was brought in that area to people who needed it the most, who needed the most guidance during that
Right.
time.
Correct. Correct.
And yeah, one of my biggest things too, because I've gone out to like halal spots out here, and they do treat you differently. And as a Muslim, it makes me sad sometimes because I'm like, I
Mhm.
know that this is not the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? This is just
Culture.
frustrating that has happened.
Culture. It
It's
comes
culture.
down to just being culture. That's right.
It's culture. I feel like sometimes Muslims place culture over Quran, the book, the deen, religion. Um, and it makes me sad. Like I went to a mosque nearby. It was actually an Indonesian mosque with a
Okay.
friend of mine who has really opened up to Islam, really, which is like a submission of
Yes.
mission to God. uh, and we were just treated poorly because culturally, predominantly, most of the people there are Indonesian, look Indonesian. And then
Yes.
me, and then like some white guy. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, what are you guys doing here? Like, what?
Right.
You're supposed to be opening up your arms to everyone, whether I'm Indonesian or not, whether I look like it or not.
That's right.
This is kind of what pushes people away from Islam, you know? And
Absolutely.
I'm practicing. And it really is so sad because I've been hesitant to want to go to the mosque out here because of that reason. I shouldn't allow that to stop me. Um, but it does. It does. I can't
Hmm.
even sit here and lie.
Hmm. Hmm. That is unfortunate and at the same time fortunate. I know you're interested in knowing why I say that. Well, if I'm going to tell you something that happened to me a few years ago. I had bought a can of tuna fish. I love tuna. So I bought a can of tuna fish. I bought several cans of tuna fish, but I inadvertently left a can in the cupboard and forgot that it was there. So it sat there for about two, maybe close to 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And my brain said, well, it hasn't been opened. I wasn't even looking for dates, expiration dates, or anything. But I said, it hasn't been opened. It must still be good. It still has to be what the can said it is. The can said tuna fish.
Mhm.
That's my brain, right? And I opened it and it was everything but tuna fish. That smell hit me and I was like, whoa, get me a bag, a plastic bag. I need to get rid of this stuff here, right? So the lesson in that is this, that what something is, or at least what somebody says a thing is in the beginning stages, could be quite different than what it turns out to be if you leave it to linger, if you leave it unaddressed, if you leave it to just gather whatever is going to be in that atmosphere that's going to attach itself to that product that was never intended to be a part of that product. That's what has happened to Islam historically. This is why so many people have an issue with Islam in today's times. And most of what they'll tell you is due to, first of all, women's issues. The second thing is going to be ethnic issues, the whole Arab superiority thing that we were talking about. And the third thing is that they find Islam, meaning so-called non-Muslims, which itself is a problem term because there's no such term in the Quran as non-Muslim. A non-Muslim, for all intents and purposes, is a non-human
Mm,
because what Allah purports to be the standard for Muslims is actually the standard for any human being who seeks peace.
mhm,
It's not a label as such. So when we reduce our religion, quote unquote, to a label, and then the thing that is in the can that has Muslim on it as a label, when that thing sits too long, inactive, and that's what's been happening for the past 1,000 years at least in the Muslim world. Islam has been sitting dormant. It has been sitting just collecting stuff that was never intended to be a part of it. And then we believe we have an opportunity to share it with the world, and we open up that can, and it stinks in the noses of people who have sense,
right.
people who know, just common sense, this is not religion.
Mhm,
The way they treat their women, my goodness, they're
right.
beating their wives. Some of them are killing women, killing their wives for disagreeing with them over some issue. And they say this can't be. And then when they go to look in the Quran, they see a translation that says men can beat their women. So I'm
Mhm,
showing you where the crux of the problem is right now. They see a translation that says men, if their women get haughty or get out of line, out of pocket, that it's to bring them back to their senses. Blah, blah, blah. Some people are they supposed to do it lightly, like with a toothbrush or miswak or something like that. Well, the Quran never says anything about beating them lightly. Their translation is strike her, just beat her. Idribuhunna is the phrase. Beat them. So how do you argue if it's in the Quran? Here's a problem that Muslims are wrestling with, and it's causing many Muslims to leave the deen because they say, well, it's in the Quran. Well, it is and it isn't. It's in the Quran, but it's not what they're saying it is because they're mistranslating the word for beat them or strike them. And if you just use your common sense English brain, you can figure this out because the word strike has many meanings, even in the English language. If I don't like the way you're treating me as an employer, I can go on strike. Did I hit anybody? Michael Jackson put out a song, one of his biggest selling records of the time, called Beat It.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking to some gang members. Did he mean to have a street fight with these guys? When he said beat it, no, he meant stay away from, get away from me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be in your company anymore. Get out of here before you get in trouble. A policeman walks the beat. There are many English words that have different meanings for one word, but they're related. So it's the same thing with the Quran. It uses a term called daraba, which they translate as beat, but it also means to travel.
Mm-hmm.
It also means to swim.
Hmm.
So daraba is the act of swimming. And what is the common factor in all of those explanations? To move from this situation of distress, this situation of confusion, and move into a better space.
Hmm.
Now, spiritually speaking, your brain already knows how to do that. We do it every time we change an uncomfortable conversation. You're going on strike against the old idea. I'm not going to work for this old idea anymore until they pay me correctly or until they treat me right. So the Quran is that kind of book. It's not the kind of book that you go to the library and rent for a week.
Mm-hmm.
The Quran is actually not intended so much to be a physical book experience.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The, the, go right ahead. Yes, please.
Um, so yeah, I've had conversations with friends about this in which they speak on, like, for example, the Bible, because I have a friend who's Christian, we're really close, and we speak on the Bible and the Quran, we go back and forth, like we've gone bar for
Yes.
bar.
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
we're speaking on how, these books, because obviously, before we didn't have the Bible as the gospel, right? And it rose up with Jesus, peace be upon him, when God wrote, what's the word? Ascended him.
Hmm. Hmm.
And um, we're speaking on how these books are not meant to be taken literally, well, to a certain degree, right? Literally, but also metaphorically. And I feel like we start to, as the veil starts to be lifted, I know for me, um, every time I reread the Quran, I get a deeper level of understanding, right? So what you were saying right now resonated because I'm like, okay, it is literal for our human brains to comprehend, but it is also like way deeper than that. And I know that things get lost in translation, right? And
Absolutely.
especially Arabic being such a um what's the word? Arabic being a language, and it has a lot of substance. Arabic being
Yeah. Yeah.
translated to English, it can
Yeah.
be difficult, right?
Yeah.
Translate
Yeah.
in general to any
Hmm.
language. Um, so yeah, what you're saying right now really resonates.
Yeah. The Quran was intended to be And I'll use a word that I think you can identify with in what you were just trying to say, that it's a nuanced language.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So um, the particular nuance that you're going to gravitate towards is that which is in line with your level of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it is a layered book.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
better than that, the Quran was, again, not intended as an outcome to be a physical book with pages, so to speak. It became that. It was not even that in the time of Muhammad the Prophet.
Right.
It became, some will say it was. Oh, there's a famous hadith. They have to always go back to the hadiths to prove a point that's not in the Quran. But it's okay. We can let them get away with that. That's fine. I understand, right? That the angel, Gabriel, he recited it, the whole of it, during the last few moments of the prophet's life, and the prophet confirmed, and or the prophet repeated it, and the angel confirmed that this is. So they say because of that, that they believe that from that point he was able to recite the entire book and have it in a compiled manner and so forth, and it was written down by the scribes and all of that. Well, it got here somehow. So I wasn't there. I can't tell you exactly how, but I can tell you that the word Quran is not a reference to anything written down. The word Quran is a reference to frequencies, things that you hear and experience.
Mm-hmm. And feel. Mm-hmm.
In fact, even closer than that, as a meaning, yes, and feel, things feel first, a matter of fact. It's not something that you dedicate to the brain. It's something that has to first reach the heart and become imprinted upon this, which the Quran speaks about all of the way through, the qalb, they call it, right? So it's not only that, but it's a book that, if it's not imprinted first and foremost in the heart and on the heart, and the Quran says about the Prophet himself that it was revealed upon his heart, not upon his brain, not upon the aql, as they call it, the intellect, upon the qalb, his
Mm-hmm.
heart. Okay, so that's our first hint. And I call it a hint not because it's not plain and clear. I call it a hint because we have gotten away from the plain and clear teachings of the Quran. So now we have to bring people back to the foundation. Because what I'm telling you is in the Quran, but because we are so trained against what is in the Quran as common sense, I'm not talking about as this, you need 50 degrees in order to understand it. All you need is a dedicated heart and common sense. And the brain will follow suit. The brain is actually following the heart in a sense. Brain gives direction, it shows you which way to go, it maps out the details of your journey, but it does not decide the quality of the journey. It's your
Yeah.
heart that's describing the quality of your journey.
It's so great. It's amazing that you're saying this right now because I was reading like a paragraph of this book this morning. I don't know if you
Yes,
read it or heard of
I'm
it.
not, but I'd like to read it.
It's a wonderful book.
Yeah, who's this by?
Hadrat Abad Al Qadir Al Jilani.
Okay. Oh, Jelani. Yeah. Okay. 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 Yeah.
So I was just reading. I was in chapter 14, literally the last like couple paragraphs of this.
Hmm.
It says here, highlighted,
Okay.
true worship is the worship of the heart. If one's heart is heedless of true worship, the ritual prayer of the material self is in disorder.
Yes.
So it's beautiful that you're speaking on this right now. It's just alignment, is all.
Absolutely. In fact, it's interesting that you mentioned alignment. This is just to show you how much we are aligned right now. When you mentioned the ascension, I think you were speaking about Isa or Jesus, and you mentioned the ascension. We should remove the word ascension from our vocabulary, remove it from the vocabulary, and replace it with alignment.
Hmm.
There's nobody that you'll ever see in life who you go outside and you look up towards the mountain and you'll see a physical body rising up in some kind of spiritual, ethereal, mystic shape or form. Or that's not what it's dealing with. Even the ascension of Muhammad himself, what they call the Isra. is not a physical journey. It's an incremental journey that can happen to any single one of us.
Okay.
At any, as long as you do what's necessary to qualify for that journey, just like if you're going on a long trip, you're going to pack your bags appropriately. Now, if
Are
you
you
don't pack your bags appropriately and you run into a situation where you need to change clothes or whatever, and you don't have the clothes because you didn't think to bring them, then that's when the alignment is off. Alignment is the number one concern of the human body. The baby first learns to balance himself perpendicularly by standing evenly on both legs and feet. That's the balance. So the Muslim mind, the human mind, I interchange the both, the true human mind. Now, mind you, everybody's not a true human because they look like this, because they have a face and arms, and that doesn't make them a true human. We'll talk about that later, maybe, right? But as long as you're a true human, your body tells you what this deen is. It's a deen that first craves balance, just like the baby first establishes herself, himself, themselves upon a platform of balance, evenness. You didn't have to teach that to the baby. That's in his fitrah, in his native nature, that he wants to be able to do what grown folks are doing. Huh? Yeah, he wants to be able to do what he sees grown people doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. All right. So he's gotta learn that skill, even though it's in his nature. He's really just fulfilling what Allah put in his very nature to be able to stand up because he sees people making much more progress walking on two legs than they are sitting on their diapers. Especially if they're full, right? He's not making that much progress. He's got to cry for mommy and and all that. So the real progress that he sees people making, although he can't put it together intellectually, but he can put it together spiritually, because babies are spiritual creatures,
Yes, they
right?
feel, they feel.
Yeah. He doesn't even know that that's English you're talking. He knows nothing about language. He doesn't know that you're an African American, or you're from Nigeria, or from Ghana. He doesn't know where you're from.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know what's in the other room until you bring him in there and show him this is this is where your crib is. He's got to learn all that. And he doesn't know anything about his mother's name.
Mhm.
He doesn't know anything about what makes her a mother, being born. He doesn't know any of that. He's a blank slate.
Seriously.
Yeah, he's an empty board that needs to be written on. And the writing on it is what the Quran calls al-kitab. This is not some distant book. The book that represents what al-kitab is the writing that Allah carved into your very nature. We even have it in our language. We say, my life is an open book. Oh, you think you know how to read me, huh? Yes, it's in our language because it's been passed down from people who were much wiser than us. And it's been passed down for countless numbers of years, but we've lost the real meat of these sayings and this wisdom, right? So that's the kitab. And the kitab that's being written because it was created by Allah and placed into your very genetics. A little science, a little bit of science sprinkled on top of what we're talking about, right? Because it was sprinkled, yeah, I mean, because it was introduced into your genetic fabric means that there is no wavering, there is no, um, I'll give you the word the Quran uses, there's no raib or no doubt in it. If the professor created it, if Sigmund Freud created it, Darwin or any one of these people who think they're highfalutin scientists, if they had created our DNA, imagine Bill Gates creating your DNA.
Oh, with the
As
way.
as a Looney Tune as he is
Yeah.
in
No.
the area of genetics, and he can't get a bug out of a computer. How's he going to get it out of you and a virus?
Mhm.
He couldn't get a virus out of his computer. But he's going to solve the problems of the COVID, and all this other nonsense they've been selling us all these years,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
At any time I'm not making sense, you let me know. Instructor Bilal, that doesn't sound like it makes sense. But I measure my words before I speak them because I need them to resonate with what is the truth.
It
If I
resonates.
get a glitch, I kind of back up and say, let me rethink that. But if I know I'm right on it because we're dealing with frequency and we're dealing with alignment, if you don't get any other two words out of this conversation, just remember those two: frequency, alignment. And that journey of the prophet, as I was going to say, the Isra, as they call it, as it is called in the Quran, that journey is a journey of developing and evolving frequencies.
Mm.
And they can happen for any human being who situates themselves upon a particular platform, upon a particular balance point, and who craves things that are going to encourage them to evolve.
Yeah.
Life is all about human evolution, not in the Darwinistic sense,
Mhm.
in the human sense that we see the planet and its evolution going through. We know good and well, no matter how bad we think the world is right now, we know good and well it's better than it was 1,000 years ago.
Mhm.
We know good and well if you had a choice and they say, would you like to live 500 years ago amongst the barbarians of ancient Rome? You choose New York. As bad as it is. He said, I'll handle New York before I handle ancient Rome when they were feeding people to the lions, that kind of thing. So the world, even as bad as certain spots of it currently is, it's still to be recognized as a place in time that has been constantly going through this metamorphosis, a spiritual journey, if you will. And that spiritual journey is supposed to take you to platform after platform after platform, just like if you know anything about the chakras, and I'm sure you might. Yeah,
Chakra.
that journey. It doesn't make the root chakra evil because it's at the bottom. It makes it a part of the journey.
Yes.
So by the time you get to the pineal and how it expresses itself, but you can't get there unless you first start at the beginning, which is the root.
Yeah.
Make sense? Yeah. So that's where we are. We're about, and that's what the Quran is all about. Trust me. Discovering the different levels of alignment that are here for us. And when we get there, we don't submit. They tell us Islam means submission. No, Islam does not mean submission. Islam means surrender.
Mm.
And people interchange the two as though they're the same thing, but they're not. Submission is normally done because of some outside force
Mm.
making them sub means beneath. That should tell you the whole story right there. It means that you're beneath something else or someone else,
Yeah.
right? So when they say submit to do the will of Allah, Allah doesn't want you to submit to Him. Allah wants you to surrender. Now, let me tell you the difference. Surrendering is when you go from one stage to another stage, but you don't do it noisily. You don't do it with fanfare. You don't do it with a whole lot of excitement and jubilation. Every time you make the next move, you don't go, ah, I made it, I made it. No, everybody doesn't need to hear your ascension.
Mhm.
What you're doing, there are two different ways of making what we call change in your life, even, or in the environment. There are two different ways that the environment brings things into change. When you think about the rotation of the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, and over again. Those are quiet changes. You couldn't tell me for sure when the actual first day of spring begins because the weather may still be acting as though it's summer or fall or whatever comes before that. In fact, I think they have something called what's the name of Indian summer.
What is that?
You heard? Indian summer is when it's not summer, but all of the things around you suggest that I'm in summer. This is summer weather. Right? I can take my put my shorts on, you run around, go back to the track. So Indian summer is simply a behavior in the weather patterns that mimic what summer is supposed to be or is like when you finally get to summer. I believe Indian summer is the correct term for that, right? So you can't tell like that because it comes in so smoothly. Look at how your child grows. Do you have any children?
No.
Okay, for now, do your life first.
Yeah,
So
I'm just life.
yeah, yeah. So look at how look at how we grow. I mean, we grow from year to year to year, but I can't necessarily put five 3-year-olds in the same room and expect to see exactly the same growth. Some won't even have teeth until they get a certain age, right? Some won't be able to walk, even at 1 years old. Sometimes they got to wait till they're 2 years old before they even learn how to walk. So we can't judge by these worldly methods of how people make progress because they have to grow systematically, and the growth is very, very quiet. It's quiet growth. Whenever you see things changing quickly with a lot of noise and fanfare, that growth is always temporary. You know how when you learn a lesson from doing the wrong thing and your mama gives you a little pat on the hiney, a little spanking, and you act like the whole world is ending. Okay, that's noisy. There's going to be growth there if you pay attention to what you did. And then some people don't pay attention to what they did. They do the same thing over and over again. So that's not growth as the fitrah introduces growth. The fitrah's growth is always done smoothly, always done so that it blends. It's not erratic when it changes. It blends, just like you growing up and your bones getting bigger and denser and your blood flowing. That blood flow is very, very smooth. The seasons, very, very smooth, going from year to year, very, very smooth. Think of anything in nature that has perpetual changes built into it. You're going to find out that that growth, even the growth of your hair, is beautiful and as plentiful as your hair is. It didn't happen overnight. And you can't actually tell us when it actually happened.
Yeah.
People outside of you have to tell you, wow, girl, your hair has grown. I have 8 children. I know that one. Yeah, man, and they might have only seen that child 3 weeks ago, but that child grew so much in their eyes from being away from it that they have to make remarks on it. Oh, I didn't know he grew. Yeah, man. Oh, when you gonna get that boy a haircut? Look at how much hair he's. I didn't think it was that bad. No, that child's hair. He needs time for a haircut, right? So it happens very, very gradually, incrementally, smoothly. Doesn't interfere with anything around it necessarily. That's that kind of growth. A young woman comes into her menses. Nobody knows that until she tells them. It didn't holler at us to say she's on her menstruation. She's 12, well, younger and younger now, 10. It doesn't holler at you. You're the only one who knows, you and probably your mama, right? And she doesn't know until you tell her. She's not there when it's happening. You're not announcing it with a flashlight and placards and all of that, things we do when we're celebrating something. That's not how it happens. It always happens smoothly and quietly because the nature of this universe, we're going to get a little esoteric for a minute, a little bit spiritual, because I know that's part of your personality type. When you close your eyes and pay attention to the universe and turn off any electronics, silence your phone, and really just maybe in the dead of the night, 2 in the morning or something like that, or unless it's very quiet in the evening where you are, and just close your eyes and listen. Turn off all the lights and just listen to what the universe is speaking. Listen to that voice. That's the voice of the source creator, the one that we call Allah. He's not shouting. He's not blowing a trumpet. See, he's not noisy. He's very, very quiet. And people would say, well, there's no sound. Yes, there is. I think you know this already, right? That if you pay careful attention to what you are hearing, you're going to hear a very light hum coming from the universe. A hum, a vibration, even a stimulation, if you will. It'll just be so silent that your soul begins to respond. So the whole idea of the hum being the first sound that humans come in contact with, that sound is what you referred to earlier as a resonance. It's resonating. And the resonance is intended to appeal to your reason, your ability to reason. They're from the same source. Resonate, reason. And reason is when the intellect begins to open up and discover things. Well, we open up and discover things when it's that kind of silent. And even in the English word silent, it's what they call, I think, an anagram, where you can scramble the letters and get another word. Well, if you scramble the letters in the word silent, you're going to get the word listen.
Hmm.
And when you look deeper into how words are developed and evolved, you'll also learn, as I did, that the word silent more than likely came from the Quran's word salat.
Hmm.
You might say, well, there's an N in the word silent. Yes, but that's called nasalization. Look that up.
Nasalization.
Yes, ma'am. It's when an N is added to a word. And we'll get into the way that happens at some other point. It's a nasalization. There are many words in the Quran and in English that have an added N called a nasalization. It'll explain it to you as soon as you look it up in a good dictionary, right? So it's when the letter N is actually added. And I'm going to give you just some insight into what that N represents as an idea. The N, when you look at my system called Nunetics and how we discover what letters mean, the letter N in all languages, not just Arabic. In Arabic, it's the letter Nun. But in all languages that have that sound, that utilize that sound, there are only two letters in any of the languages that are called nasal letters. The first one is N, the second one is M. That's his sister.
Nasal
So you got,
letter.
yeah, M and N. How do we know this for sure? Because when you pronounce those letters and hold the sound in your mouth, you feel it in your nasal cavities. In, you feel it buzzing. M, you feel it buzzing.
That is my kitten.
Okay, well, hey, that was good timing, right? I can't hear it, just so you know, but I love animals. So they're called nasalizations because the noon or the letter N also represents intuition.
Mm.
It represents you being able to detect something without physically seeing it. That's what intuition is. You know it's, you believe it's true. You know it's true, but you can't prove it. But people say, well, how do you know? No, it's just, I have a strong feeling. Just like you have a strong feeling that somebody's going to call and they call.
Mhm.
Or you have a strong feeling that, your cousin went out to a club or something. You say, man, I wish she hadn't gone, man. I just got bad feelings. And then you find out later that there was a shootout or something crazy that she just escaped. So the intuition is an inner sense. It's not something happening in the intellect. It's an inner sense that tells you something wrong. There's a frequency off. See, that's what it's doing. It's alerting you to the fact that a frequency is off. So that's what the N represents in language. And intuition can obviously be for the good. Intuition is how most of the knowledge we have in the world came to be what it is because we suspected. We didn't know for sure. The scientist in the lab, he just guessing. Tesla or whoever, Einstein or whoever, right? They're in the lab. They tell you I was up to my 100th invention. I threw all the rest of them away because they didn't work. But that 101 time, that 101st time that I experimented and just added a tweak, now it's working for me. But it was based on intuition. And many of the top scientists of the world, this is how they came into their best discoveries. So why is Instructor Bilal telling me all of this? I'm not in the science lab. I'm not in because it works that way for your life also, especially if you're a very spiritually inclined person. You see, when you were going through issues with Islam, you didn't throw Islam in the garbage can, as many people would have done. I'm, you know, people say, no, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You've heard that. Well, the bathwater is where all of the frequencies are. The baby loves to splash and create frequencies in the water, right? So when he's finished splashing, you just throw out the dirty water. You don't throw out the baby. That's how we are mentally with information that we're taught, that we're told, that we're coming into, that we're trying to figure out. There are issues with it, like with Islam, that become very muddled and muddy and hard to see through and all, but you don't throw out the Islam. You get rid of those portions that don't serve your interest anymore. When you first put the baby in the water, nice. You leave the baby in there for 15 minutes, the water becomes very dirty, sometimes extremely filthy, depending on where he's been. He might have been playing in the mud.
Mhm.
So you don't want to keep all of that, but you want to keep the baby. So that's the purpose of intuition also. You intuit things, and sometimes you don't hold on to everything that you feel, because that's what intuition is. It's a feeling. You mentioned that earlier. But you hold on to everything that's worthwhile, that's serving your purpose, that's making you have cleaner thoughts. That's what intuition is doing versus what just comes intellectually that you can accept or reject. But a lot of those things that come straight to the heart through intuition, we call it nose. We say it's the nose. That's the nose knows. That's how we say it, right? Because the nose can smell things before the eyes see them. You go into your grandmother's house for Thanksgiving. You're not even in the house yet, but you smell the turkey. Yeah. You smell the apple pie. Oh, grandma's cooking apple pie. How do you know? My nose knows. And that's what intuition does. It shows you a picture of something before it actually arrives. It's still in the ether. It's still in what the Quran calls el ghaib, the unseen. And everything that becomes seen was once unseen. We think that it has to be seen first and then it becomes unseen. The exact opposite. It's in the unseen. Give you a quick, for instance. You, me. Our parents had to have seen something if they were intentional in the objective of making a baby. They had to have seen, oh man, what it could be like if we had some children. It was first committed to the imagination,
And
right? Yeah, yeah. I know this is your language. See?
yes,
I
everything.
took, yeah, then it becomes manifest.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes manifest after that. The very fact that the word manifest has the word man in it, and man means mind. Man means the ability to think, right? So manifest means that it becomes something that the mind produces as a final product. So this physical three-dimensional reality that we call the chair and the microphone and the printer and the phone, telephone, all of that is the product of somebody's vivid imagination made manifest. So I'm going to stop there and let you talk. I can go on and on.
Um, so referencing, you said something about a true human.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? A true
Okay.
human?
There's an esoteric, you familiar with that term? There's an esoteric meaning that has been attached to the word human. And that esoteric meaning is monster.
Monster?
Yes. There's a dictionary that they have since taken off of the general market, meaning you can't go in Barnes and Noble and find this dictionary anymore. You used to be able to do it because nobody was looking for it except the people who knew what it was.
Hmm.
It's called Black's Law Dictionary.
Black?
Yes. Black's, I'm going to send you this replay so you'll be able to get whatever
Oh,
you missed.
perfect. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Black's Law Dictionary had nothing to do with a black person. It has to do with black as an indication of not being able to see what the words were saying unless somebody actually told you what they were, told you what it was saying. It's used, there's also law dictionaries that do the same thing. You know, if you go to court, even though they're speaking the English language, they're talking a different language when they talk legal terms. Same thing in medicine. They're talking English, but those medical terms and terminology are not saying what you think they're saying. So they're able to talk over your heads
Right.
using the language that you think you're familiar with.
Right.
So blacks is doing the same thing. And when you look up the word human, it says monster. It says sea monster.
Hmm.
It's because they're speaking in coded symbolic language. The true meaning for human is humus, mind. The HU is for humus. It's also for hue, HUE. And it indicates several things. It's also for hue, HEW. This is how they have coded the English language. So to hew something is to carve something from a tree, from wood. Well, that's what some people do. They experiment with things and they come out with new inventions. They're hewing. There are some people who relegate everything like children do to colors. So we're also HE or HUE, man or mind. That's how children start. They start by learning the differences in colors. And it's later on that some so-called grown-ups attach negative meanings to those colors. That's how so-called black people became niggas, excuse the expression. That's how some white people became devils, you know. So we have an attachment, something negative to say about every one of the colors. The red man, okay, oh, is that the Indian? But you tell an Indian that you're a red man, he'll get mad at you because he knows it's not a positive thing that they're trying to put over on them. They call the white man, but he's more pink man than he is white man. They call so-called black people black, but the average one of us is brown, some shade of brown. How come we're not a brown man? So they've taken all of these concepts and they've attached an artificial layer of meaning to these words so that when we meet and greet each other socially, we stay socially excuse this term, retarded, not clinically, socially. The world right now is in the greatest state of social retardation ever recorded for the modern world. Worse than when slavery was in existence. The thing that makes today worse is that back in the 1600s and 1700s, when slavery was in full effect, they knew they were slaves.
Oh, yeah.
Here in 2025, we are enslaved to all of this material stuff. We live for materialism,
Yes.
the
We're
average one of us, and we don't realize we're slaves.
yeah.
That's what makes today worse than back when they told you you were a slave, you work for me. You don't know right now that you work for industry, that you work for government, that you work for, all of these other things that are not even paying you to work for them, because this is a very deceptive world we're living in. That's
Yes.
why we need the level of information that the Quran supplies. The Quran is not the average book.
Mhm.
The Quran is not your library study that you go during your lunch period at school and just read it and get another chapter in and all that. And it ends up on the best-selling list of, whatever. That's not what the Quran is. It doesn't pretend to want to be on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
The Christians like to brag. Oh, the Bible has been the number one bestseller for 1,000 years. They like to brag. Well, that's no big deal. It's no big achievement. If you put a book out that had a naked lady on the front as a picture, as its first picture, that'll be the biggest selling. That'll be the greatest selling book of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. The
You
majority
see?
don't realize that we are slaves in this world. Where,
Yes.
like, and I feel like for me, it can be kind of difficult because sometimes people don't even realize it. Like, I would speak on something, and I'm like,
Hmm.
this is the place, this is not the place, nor the people. They're just not ready to hear. It's just they haven't. It's not. Yeah, they just haven't reached that level of
Consciousness.
yes, because it's not in a way to where I feel like I'm better than them or I think that I'm better than them. I think it's
Yes,
just
ma'am.
the veil hasn't been lifted
That's it. That's
for
it.
them yet.
That's right. That's right. They haven't what they would call ascended, what I would call aligned. They're not properly aligned. If your spine is not properly aligned, you're eventually going to experience a whole lot of pain, because what should be locked into one section of your development becomes loose. The connection is not there. So you can't do with what Allah gave you, what Allah intended for you to do, because you're not properly aligned. And they did that on purpose to society
Yes.
because they did not want you to stand up.
Yep. And that's why going back to everything that you were saying about the etymology, right? The real translation of these words and how intentional that the powers that be are with what they have us accustomed to saying, what they have
Yes.
society
Yes.
accustomed to saying, right? And it's a lot. It is a lot. I
Yeah.
have a couple mental breakdowns about this. Like,
Yeah. But no need to, because whatever you are dealing with, Allah has created you to be able to accommodate it.
yes, absolutely. To be able to sustain.
One of the things that the Muslim teachers of the world don't know, and if they know it, then they're willfully keeping it from us, and that is that Allah calls us also, those who are following the guidance. That is not just anybody, but those who are following the guidance, the kitab, that inner book of consciousness, of deciding the right thing, doing the right thing. That book that has no doubt in it. It doesn't have misgivings. It doesn't have got you moments in it where it's trying to trick you or fool you. It's telling you very, very plain in your language. That's why it says that the Quran was revealed in the language of what they call Arabia. Arabia Mubina, which has nothing to do with the colloquial Arabic language of the Middle East. It has something to do with the native language that is resonating within your own genetics, your own being, which is the same language for every human being born. So all of us speak Arabia. All of us speak the same exact language. What's the language of the newborn baby? What's the first sound that a baby makes?
Cry.
Yeah, yeah, but just mimic a cry for me. Let me just hear how you do it. Now, is there a different sound in Malaysia? Is there a different sound in Timbuktu when a baby cries in Timbuktu? Is there a different sound in Somalia? No. And did we teach the baby to cry like that? No. Allah taught that baby. So Allah taught the human being to cry in exactly the same language, no matter where you were born on planet Earth. That's the first language. Everything else that we express out of this mouth in the form of words and sounds came afterward. So if Allah is going to reveal a book, wouldn't it make sense that he would reveal it in a method or through a methodology that every human being could resonate with? That can't be colloquial Arabic because all of us don't speak Arabic. Why would he give one ethnic group an advantage over the rest of the world when it comes to his final message? Shouldn't the final message be accessible to anybody who has the right heart and mind to accept it and benefit from it? Or should we all have to go through the Arabs to get that? Because that's really what they're saying in essence. They were born knowing Arabic, they were raised in an Arabic household, but the rest of the world, we have to learn that language. How does that jive in the mind of people who are not saying anything about it, but you got to be thinking it? These must be God's favorite people. Because first of all, he gave it to them. The final message he gave to them. And in order for me to learn it, I have to go to them. I have to go to, their universities, their Arabic schools, their madrasas to learn this language so that I can communicate with the source creator, Allah. That's not fair. If judgment happened right now and I had to face Allah, I would say exactly the same thing to him. I say, Allah, I don't believe you were being fair when you left that final evolution of education to an ethnic group. But he didn't. Allah speaks the language of nature. And the nature of language, the nature of nature is resonance, frequency. Frequency reaches all creatures, no matter where they are, no matter what they are. Amoeba moves based on frequency. It knows what to stay away from based on the vibration and the frequency of that object. Without a brain, amoeba knows what to do to save itself. You following what I'm saying? Yeah. Amoeba knows. You don't have to teach it. You don't have to sit in a classroom in a madrasa. Say, I'm going to teach you, amoeba, what things to stay away. No, it's clocked into your nature. For us, it's clocked into our genes, our genetics, our DNA knows. That's why the baby knows what to cry about and when to stop crying when it's out of danger. When it feels it's in danger, it's going to protest. It's going to rebel. When it feels that it's been taken out of that danger scenario, then it will rest. When it eats, it knows to digest. So we live between rest and digest, according to science, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to be taught that in a madrasa or a masjid or a synagogue for that matter, or the church. We don't have to sit in some physical brick building and learn what God wants us to do or how he wants us to be. Your nature knows that. And it's demonstrated every time a baby is born. Just study how the baby stays peaceful. You'll know how to bring peace into the world. Be fair. Siblings are arguing with each other. You gave him a toy. You didn't give me a toy. Be fair. This is your toy. I'm going to give you a toy. It might not be the exact same toy, but you'll be satisfied with this toy because it's more acclimated to your nature, what you like to do. You know, it's a doll or whatever, a fire truck or whatever. If you give them both equal access to the things that they want for that age, you got peace in the house. Same thing if you want peace in the world. You have to give each group what it is they crave if it's good. And if it's not good, you have to teach them why it's not good. It's the same process. That's Islam. What the Quran calls al-Islam. It has a definite article attached to it. And it's not just Islam in the Quran. It's never mentioned as Islam when it's talking about what we practice as deen. It says deen al-Islam, deen ul-Islam, because it's a definite thing that we're practicing. Make sense? You look a little mesmerized.
Nice. It's nice being able because obviously I found you on YouTube. You
Yes,
came up on my recommendations actually. Yeah.
good.
And I listened to I think I listened to like three of your lectures.
Mhm.
They're like an hour long. And I was like, huh, this actually really resonates because it's not often that you find, at least for me, I have found a couple, but they are like on the younger side. And I do appreciate hearing like our elders speaking on this because they have so much more wisdom. You know,
Sometimes.
sometimes
Yes.
I'm very particular with who
Yeah.
I choose to follow or align myself with.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
what on everything you were speaking on aligned. So I'm like, these are questions, these are things that I have thought of, these are things that I may know. And then you also brought to light a lot of things, plenty that I don't know,
Yes,
especially
ma'am.
when Arabic, because I still haven't put in the time to learn it. um, so it's nice to have access to that knowledge.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you for being an active listener. Some people listen only because they want you to stop so they can say something. And when you ask them about what you just said, they couldn't tell you because they're really not listening to you. They're listening to their next thoughts,
Mhm.
especially when they think they're competing with the person who's speaking. So I like to give people a chance to say what's on their hearts and what's on their minds so that there will be no excuse for not listening when it's my turn. Because I believe that when I'm speaking, I'm giving them something that I call life saving information. I don't believe that what I'm saying is for entertainment. Absolutely not for entertainment. You have to be patient in order to benefit from it because sometimes it is 2 or 3 hours long. But break it up like you do other stuff, you know, half an hour at a time. But you'll have access to it. And if you never hear from me again, if you never bother to attend another class or buy another book or anything like that, you'll still have enough to go on for a while. It'll hold you if you study it. If you're not going to study it, you might as well just take it and throw it into the trash can with the other stuff that you're really not interested in studying. But if you study what Instructor Benjamin Bilal, that guy, if we study what he's saying, and I always separate myself from him because I consider him to be the leader in me. Instructor Benjamin Bilal is my consciousness, and I follow my consciousness. because I believe my consciousness is directly aligned with my source creator, Allah. So if I'm telling you what to have for dinner, that's not my consciousness talking to you. That's my cultural, leanings. I want steak, I want fish, I want, yeah. That's not the one who I'm following. But if I say that I'm going to introduce you to the meaning for every Arabic letter as it appears in nature, so that when you go to those letters, you won't just be looking at letters and sounds coming out of somebody's mouth. You're going to be looking into the creation to see the rest of the meaning, what he's called the rest of the story. Now, that's the rest of the story. And when I teach, I want people to know the full story of what Allah is doing. And the fullest story you can get is the understanding of the words that Allah revealed. And that's in any language. All languages contain letters. But the way he designed Arabic is that it will resonate in the whole system in a way that indicates higher meanings for things. The higher meaning, for instance, if I give you the first letter of the Arabic alphabet, you know what that is? Yeah. If I give you Alif and I tell you that Alif symbolizes your spine, if I don't tell you anything else, all you have to do is study the spine. But see, you have to study it. I'm not going to study it for you. I'll study it enough to get you on the road and to get your curiosities open. But when you go to the Britannica or wherever you go for information for breaking down, what a thing is, and I tell you that it represents your spine, then you should start looking at what the spine does. I'm giving you the concrete noun when I give you a letter. You're to go and find the concrete verb, the action word. What does the spine do as an action? This is beautiful when you understand it. So when you say, well, the spine does several things, the spine does many things, instructor. That's my point. I can't be the one to teach all of those dozens of things to you. You have to study it.
Mhm.
Just give me the basics of what it does. Oh, it keeps me upright. It's the reason I can walk upright and walk forward. Okay. What is it in your metaphysical life that allows you to stand up upon two and balance yourself and move forward in an even gait to where you're not tripping over your feet? You're not even thinking about it when you walk. Once you learn to walk, you're not even thinking about it anymore. What is in you metaphysically that allows you to do that? A lot of things. But one of the things that does that is faith, because you wouldn't take a step unless you had enough faith to know that you can do it without major issues. When the baby is just learning to walk, it's not as sure footed because it doesn't have 100% faith that it's going to stay standing up. It might run into something like it did the last time it tried to walk. I've seen my children run into walls trying to walk. But once they finally get there, you don't have to remind them to put one foot in front of the other. The faith, the trust that they have in their own possibilities for doing this, for running, forget about walking, for running, jumping over a wall or whatever, playing on the soccer field, they don't have that issue anymore. That's called Iman, which we loosely translate as faith. Amana. That's the verb. Amana. He had faith. He believed. He trusted. That's in your nature as deeply embedded as your ability to walk, and have faith that you can do it. Have faith that you're a construction company. You know that your workers can build this building for this guy when he hands you the blueprint.
Mhm.
He doesn't say, I think I can do that. The guy who's just learning how to build, maybe, or who wants to build, he's in college, he wants to take a course in construction. I can't trust him with this project. He hopes he can do it. He believes he can do it. See why they call all of us believers? But that's not the strongest part of what that word amana is indicating. Because I can believe in something that I don't know all of the ins and outs of, and I'll wreck your project trying to build something just because I believe I can do it. There was a song once called "I Believe I Can Fly," wasn't it? He's in jail now. He's not flying. R. Kelly's not flying. I'm using him as an example. I mean, Allah forgive me for if I said anything bad about him, but you understand the point. I believe I can touch the sky. Okay, all right, you keep believing that. But he's not talking physically though. He's talking metaphorically, metaphysically. And I get it that he's reaching higher and higher to the point where the sky is the limit, as they say. So that aleph at the beginning of words in the Quran is giving that indication of something strong, something durable. These are all attributes of your spine. Something that's straight, but that can also bend when necessary. You could write a book on that. The human posture. We're built to stand up, but we can also sit down. But the sitting down is temporary. When the light is up, we're supposed to be out doing some work. And that work necessitates that we've been sitting so long as Americans that they're building computer desks now where there's no place to sit. You know those, right? You got to
Yeah.
stand up. They said we're too sedentary, right? So we're having all kinds of spinal issues and because we sit too long.
Tech neck.
Neck, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know all of the terms, right? Because we don't get enough exercise. Me included. I mean, I write for a living. So amana, beginning with aleph, everything that you can factor into what your spinal column does, you can factor it into the meaning of words in the Quran that begin with that letter. And that's a fascinating study for me. Allah gave that to me. It's a fascinating study. So now the scholars of the world who say, our forte is teaching Arabic, this science is meant to enhance the work that they've already established. It takes nothing away from them. They just have to learn to put that extra layer or those extra layers on the meanings that they've already come up with for what your spine does or for what the letter is doing, because they won't even know what the spine does because they don't know it means spine. So it's going to enhance and evolve because Allah tells us that He is the evolver of all. He calls it Harab. He is the evolver and the sustainer of all knowledge. So your language is supposed to be evolving. Your understanding of what Allah is saying in the Quran is supposed to be constantly and consistently growing incrementally more useful to people, to yourself and to people. That's evolution, not the Darwin nonsense. The true evolution, which is mostly inside. It's not your physical body that's changing from monkey to man. It's your tendencies, your internal spiritual qualities that are growing from animalistic to human, true human. Anything else you want to say?
That's like I feel like that is a journey, right? Coming back to self or even
Yeah.
God. I feel like it's one and the same. You
Yes.
yourself, you'll find God. You go to God, you'll find yourself.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
um,
There's a very famous hadith, I don't normally use hadith on this level or on a consistent level, but I have come across some that make perfect sense. And there's one that's given in the volumes of Bukhari and Muslim, the two most famous uh, hadith specialists, where it says that to know yourself is to know Allah.
Yes. I came across that one too.
Yeah, yeah. Now, is it saying that you are Allah? Not per se. No. But it's saying that if you don't know yourself, you'll never know Allah because Allah represents a level of consciousness that you have to be conscious of in order to benefit from it. It doesn't mean that you can't make it in the world without knowing who God is or without knowing who the source creator of all of the. You can make it. There are civilizations that have been built by people who don't profess one God, or, we have ancient Aztecs and ancient people in parts of India and parts of Africa and Ethiopia and other places. They built Egypt, for instance, although they did believe in one God in the sense that they were teaching it, but they weren't fully into the light on that subject. But look at what they have monuments that are still here 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years later. So it's not that you won't make progress not believing as Muslims believe in Allah. You'll make progress, but it's evolutionary progress, meaning that when you hear a higher level of understanding and explanation coming from there, you wouldn't have a problem accepting the evolution. It's just like if somebody introduces, are you driving? Do you drive? What kind of car do you have?
Civic.
Yeah, okay, Honda. Yeah. All right. So if somebody, you've been driving your Civic, you're in love with your Civic, you've been driving it for 2, 3, 4 years, maybe, whatever. But when somebody introduces the newest Civic on the line, the one with all the advanced, mechanisms and all, and all you have to do is think and the window goes down, you're
I'm anti
okay.
that
All right. Well, then I'm speaking to people who are not.
technology.
There are people who, as soon as the latest and the greatest thing comes out, if it makes their life easier,
Right. Yes.
that's what I'm pointing at. Not if it's just flamboyant stuff. I'm talking about if it makes your life easier to the point where you can then handle other important things because you're not paying attention to whether this car is going to break down in 5 miles. You want the latest and the greatest in terms of the technology. That's technological evolution. If you seek to get a particular mate or somebody that you might want to marry one day or have children by or whatever the case is, you want somebody who's on it enough so that when you have at least a conversation, you don't get bored to death because he's nowhere in sync with what it is you're talking about or the references that you're making to anything. He has no clue. All he knows is basketball, and and whatever he else he likes to do. That's not enough for a person like you. And it doesn't mean that you're haughty or proud or nothing like that. It has to do with the evolution of your ambitions. It has to do with how you were taught about life and what you should be looking for from life.
Mhm.
So it has nothing to do with being, anything like Iblis. That's not what we're talking about. He was not an evolved creature, but he was a part of what's in every single one of us because that's what Allah is speaking to. He's not speaking to some creature born, made of fire, 5 million years ago.
Yeah, that's one of the videos that I came across first. Iblis. Iblis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you need to go on YouTube and listen to my latest on the subject of Iblis.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple where I'm dealing with that issue. And I'm also writing a book right now on that topic because people need to understand what Iblis represents in them. Whenever you read the Quran, your first question should be, what does this represent inside of me? Those
Mhm.
characters, even though some of them are considered to be historical, they have nothing at all to do with you per se. This physical flesh and blood person born on July 16th, 1959, my birthday, right, has nothing to do with this individual flesh and blood person. Allah's not putting me on Jump Street by putting my persona in the Quran. you know, he's not going to put Pharaoh, ancient Pharaoh, Firaun as he's called. He's not going to put him on Jump Street. You mean this one? They call him the most evil person outside of Satan himself. They call Iblis, not Iblis. Pharaoh. They say he's the most evil person born outside of Iblis and outside of Satan. Why are you gonna tag me like that? I have to go to Allah with that tag, the most evil person, even though I even tried to repent at the end of it. But that's not a physical person that the Quran is speaking about. That's a mental, moral, and spiritual disposition that can prop up, pop up, reveal itself at any time in any of us who create the conditions for that personality. All of us don't create the conditions for it, or all of us don't have that level of intensity in the arrogance that we carry. Sometimes it's temporary. Oh man, I'm sitting here acting like I'm better than every. It pops up in everyone. It's a tendency, it's an urge in all of us. When it becomes sustained, that's when it becomes Iblis or Pharaoh. When your governments of the world begin to act like that, now you got to be careful.
Yep. I was just about to say, I feel like, I mean, you see it in the world now, right? For example, all
Hmm.
Israel with Netanyahu,
Yeah,
or even like
he's
other people who run this world, like the families that run this world, right?
yeah,
So
bloodlines, Illuminati.
Masonic, everything Mason.
Oh, yeah. But check this out. It's even in our families. See,
Oh,
whatever is in the Quran is universal. It
you know what?
applies to all.
Yes, it's crazy that you say that because I just went back to Indonesia this past, like 2 months ago
Hmm.
to see family. It's been like 4 years since I've last seen them because of COVID, and I'm older now, so there were things that I noticed when I was younger, and my mom. Most families are like this. I feel like especially in Indonesia, they're like, oh, that's just my family. That's just how they are. And I'm like, no, that is not okay. Certain things that they're doing are not okay, nor does it align with what they're constantly trying to push upon me because they see me as like the black sheep because I'm not following things the way you're
The
supposed to.
rebel.
Yes. And I'm like, right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm starting to see like family dynamics
Hmm.
unravel and the
Hmm.
reality, really.
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
well, okay, well, I see how it is. It's just not how I'm choosing to live my life. Not that that way is terrible. It's just not something that aligns with
With your spirit, right? With your interests.
yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how Allah created us to be
Yes.
free,
Yes.
to make those kinds of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The human being is a free spirit, and you should refuse to be subjugated by spirits that are anti what you are. They are anti where you are, what your ambitions are, especially if they're so diametrically opposed to where you're trying to go that they're going to hinder you from
Yes.
reaching your goal. If you have your goal and I have mine and we're kind of parallel, you reach your goal, I reach my goal, no problem. But if you have your goal and I have my goal, and my goal begins to sway this way and interfere with you getting where you're trying to go, then that's a problem. That happens in couples and marriages. It happens among siblings, the rivalry among siblings. It happens. So it's not just the top 10 Illuminati families, the top 10 bloodline families. They are the most glaring example of it. But the example that affects you and me the most are in our family, our immediate family circle. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to do something about it, it's not about getting out here with a rifle or a shotgun and saying, I'm going to kill Bill Gates or I'm going to kill, whatever the president or whatever. No, no, it's about saying, I'm going to get out here and talk to my cousin Pookie. Pookie making the whole family look bad at the family reunion right now. Let me pull Pookie on the side and say, Pookie, come on, you know you can do better than this. So Pookie doesn't become a pedophile. You understand? Because that's where that behavior starts. I don't want Pookie to become a diehard racist or misogynist. So I have to go catch Pookie while he's in his infancy as a behavior. And then if I absolutely cannot do that, then I have to distance myself. I have to what do they call that? when you separate, what they say, they call it the worst punishment in for humans. When they put you in prison and they put you in a single cell, what is there's a word for that?
Confinement.
Huh?
Confinement?
I'm sorry, some of what you're saying is being lost. See?
Solitary confinement?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yes, solitary confinement. That's it. What they call isolation.
Yeah.
Listen to that word. Ice, solation.
Mm.
It's when your soul is put on ice.
Mm.
That's why they have to separate you because your soul has become cold, uncaring, insensitive. That's why the worst criminals are put in isolation. Soul means by yourself. That's why they call what's in us our soul, because although it exists amongst other people and it shares a common objective as a soul, the spiritual qualities that like to be around other people who have these same qualities. That's the sharing. That's called the group soul. But above and beyond the group soul is your individual soul that needs to develop. And you are the main person pushing for that development. You are the main person who does not have to allow other people to infiltrate your soul and take it on a journey in the direction that they want it to go in. This is how people change different personality. I'm teaching a course actually on the psychology of the soul. I'm going to start that in about 2 months. There's something you would be
Okay.
perfectly fit for. I'll send out a notice when I'm going to do that. But soul means one. I'm the only person here. I'm the only soul in the room because it's dealing. And see, once you deal with the one, you've dealt with the whole humanity. That's another Quranic principle. Allah says anybody who injures or kills one person, it is as though they have killed all of humanity. Just to show you how intricately tied together our souls are. We have a group soul also. I'm in the so-called African American race, which I don't like that term, but people understand that. And there are things that African Americans do that are tied into an African American group soul. That's why they like to say, oh, they like fried chicken, those people. They like pork chops, whatever, because that has become a part of our ethnic identity. Those people like to dance. Those people like to cuss and fuss with each other. It becomes a part of your group soul. But there's your individual soul, the one that's being judged.
Hmm.
And the judgment, if I can get away with saying this in front of my Muslim mullah, imam, sheikh brothers, the soul that is talking about that's going to be individually judged is your psyche. It's not something that's going to split off from you when you die and go before Allah and his big throne and above the seventh heaven and you'll be there by yourself and knock-kneed, worried because of what you did, when you were 8 years old or when you were 13, and you did this or you stole a purse or something when you were 16, and you're just knocking knees, afraid of what Allah is going to. No, no, no. That's not the judgment that it's speaking about. It's the judgment of your own conscience. When that conscience is awakened, when it is awakened. So your effort on this planet at this time should be to know how to awaken your conscience. And until we awaken our conscience, we will never be in direct contact with the creator of that conscience.
Hmm.
So, like I said earlier, people live and die without knowing who Allah is.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or they're being taught about Allah in a way that is fantastic and really unbelievable. He's separate from you. He speaks to only, he speaks to his prophets. He doesn't speak to regular people. That's what we're taught. That, wahi, the only ones who can speak with Allah are the ones he gives permission to. He gives them wahi. He doesn't talk to Huki, who needs correcting. And he talked to Musa, he talked to Muhammad, he talked to Ibrahim. He got a special clique of people that he communicates with, but not you. So then how are we, what the Quran calls basharun mithlukum, human, mortal, like everybody else? That's what Muhammad says about human beings in the Quran. He says that he's told to say this to people. Qul ana basharun mithlukum. I am a mortal just like all the rest of you. And I have been given what's called a wahi, that spiritual connection, because that's the means and the method through which Allah gives you your spiritual evolution, by speaking to you, speaking to your conscience, though. And everybody's not connected on that level.
Mhm.
So the Indians gave it to us in the chakra system, which goes all the way back to ancient Ethiopia, with those people who established their knowledge. That knowledge spread to even the Christians of ancient Africa, ancient Ethiopia, that whole area. They weren't Muslims. Ancient people in Jerusalem, they had Christians and Jews. They had Christians and Jews in these ancient countries. If you didn't know they weren't Muslims, you wouldn't know that they weren't, because they believed the similar things or the same things. Before Christianity became Romanized, they were believing essentially the same. They didn't believe that Jesus was God. They believed he was a speaker for God, a messenger. And that was clocked into their language, into their words. They meant these things. But the conspirators of the world, the language corrupters of the world, they kept that knowledge from the majority of people. So unless you're an independent student of language, as I am and many others are, you'll never know it. Christians have more than enough help right now in what they say they believe. They have more than enough help to bring them to a more correct and upright posture as Christians without having to take a single shahada. Not the way they explain shahada. There is shahada, but it means something totally different than what they've given us, as you have to state la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. No, it's not supposed to be a magic formula that erases all of your previous sins. The only way you can erase all of your previous sins is by doing righteous deeds that erase those sins. That's what the Quran tells us. Erase a good deed by doing a good deed. Good deeds erase bad deeds. And sometimes when you stand at the blackboard with your eraser, you erase and you still have traces of what used to be there. That's how humans are. You never get rid of everything. That's why Muhammad had to be corrected in the Quran, because there's always traces of previous behaviors that have become indelibly embedded into your genes, your DNA. And that's where all of your behavior comes from. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Allah doesn't want us to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect to get paradise. You can be from the hood. You can be gallivanting and sitting in circles of gangbangers. As long as you're not participating in that behavior, and as long as you're doing and saying things to help systematically bring them up from that behavior. You're not supposed to run from them and say, I'm only going to deal with the college graduates. You're supposed to look at it, because again, those people are in your family, some of them. So how can I run from them? Let me devise a system for teaching them, for educating them, for bringing them into this new level of evolution. And listen, as long as your frequency remains higher than their frequency, the lower frequency is going to seek to match that frequency.
Yes. That's why you have
Ah,
a living example of what it is
yes.
you want and are choosing to speak on. You know, if you're speaking, that happens often where it's like someone's telling me something and I'm in my head, I'm like, you don't even, this is not aligning with you, you know, like you don't even
Yes.
follow what you're trying to tell me. So even though it may be good advice and I am
Mhm.
listening, I hear you, but I'm like, you can't be telling me anything because you're not living it.
Exactly. It's not matching. You know, I watched I don't know if you ever heard of the television show. It's called The Dog Whisperer.
Yeah.
If you write that down just so you remember it, because you'll find it fascinating. It's a guy named Caesar. I forget his last name, but he's from
Oh, this is
Mexico.
over. Yes, I have seen this.
Yeah, yeah.
Clips, not a complete episode or a whole like
Okay.
season.
Well, if you pull him up on YouTube, you'll get the complete episodes,
Okay.
which run about 20, 25 minutes per episode or something, sometimes a little longer. But he goes into these people's homes who have vicious murderer dogs, dogs who have murdered other dogs, or just who have severe behavioral issues
Mm-hmm.
with people and with other dogs. And most of the time he has these issues with people is because those people are neurotic.
Mm-hmm.
They don't believe in correcting anything the dog does. They give the dog everything he asks for. The dog comes around their food bowl and they let him get away with it. Caesar comes in to show you how to civilize those dogs, but he's giving you enough information to help you correct your behavior
Yeah.
along with it. But I
Yeah.
point to him because he is the perfect example of matching frequencies. That's all he's really doing. He's causing those dogs
Mm-hmm.
to match his frequency or the frequency of the owner because he
Yeah.
teaches the owners how to have a certain frequency, how
Mm-hmm.
to modulate that frequency so that you are, without the dog knowing it, bringing the dog up to your level and showing the dog how that is more advantageous than you staying on the low level you're on, demanding things, barking whenever you want something, biting when you do, because the dogs believe that they own you,
You know, it's so
or or they believe that they are protecting you if they start barking and biting at other people around you. You were going to say,
it's so funny that you say that because I actually have kittens and one of them has been peeing on my bed. And I thought
ah,
a behaviorist. I thought about calling a behaviorist because I'm like,
mhm,
figure out why she's peeing on my bed. My partner is like, just watch, just watch them. And over time, as I've watched my kittens, I'm like, oh my
yes,
god, she's doing this because she's upset at me. She wants me to. She's a princess. She thinks that,
yeah,
and so every time she's upset, she'll just pee on my bed. But it's
yeah,
where I sleep, so it's me.
yes, it's you. That's right.
So
They know they can't get away with it literally,
yeah,
but
so
figuratively for sure.
exactly, and we were able to nip it in the bud. She's been doing a lot better the past week or so
Hmm. Hmm.
by feeding her at a. She needs structure, so feeding her at
Yes.
the same time every day in the morning, and she's not going to pee on my bed. So that's what we've concluded.
If you watch Caesar, you'll get hints towards even correcting your cats.
Even better.
If you watch Caesar, you'll get corrections as to how to correct a horse's behavior because the animal nature is related to other animals, no matter what animals they are. Now, I'm not talking about alligators and reptiles. That's a whole nother behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That's instinctive behavior. They can't help what they do because they're going instinctively. But if you're talking mammals, you can get advice from Caesar. And I'm saying this because of just my observations. So you can get advice from Caesar as to how to correct some of the behaviors, not all of them, because the animals are specific, but you can get information on how to correct other other animals' behaviors. Is
Amazing.
your time? Yeah. Is it?
Definitely be looking into that.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I really appreciate this call.
I appreciate your appreciation.
definitely opened up my eyes to a lot more things that I
Hmm.
could research. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And listen, I'm going to send you all of the information you need to actually join the class.
Perfect.
The class happens every Sunday at 1 p.m. You're in California?
Yes.
Yeah, so it'll be a few hours earlier, but it happens every Sunday at 1. There is a cost, but I'm going to waive that cost for this semester. Every semester is 3 months long.
Okay.
We just started a new semester, the
Okay.
beginning of this month. So you have till the end of the year before you'd have to pay a dime if you want to continue with us.
Okay.
But I think we're going to be saying some fascinating and interesting things between now and the end of 2025 that you're definitely going to want to participate in and contribute to. All right. In most of our classes, the people can speak back. We have an open Q&A session. So whatever I'm saying is one thing, but what you want to contribute based on your thoughts about the same topic, you can feel free to do.
Perfect. Sounds
All right.
good.
I will email you that
All
information.
right. Thank you so much.
And invite others. If you think that right away other people can benefit, just send them the link. I have no
Sounds
problem with that. Just say, hey, listen to what this guy is saying. He's kind of fascinating. He's kind of interesting. Feel free.
good. Perfect. Thank you so
All right.
much.
You're very, very welcome,
All
Miss
right. Have a
Salvador.
good day.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. I'll send you this once it's edited.
Sounds good. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.